Hi, everybody. For some people, during these days of lockdown, it's felt almost as though God has abandoned us, God has rejected us. Some people are talking about this time and this virus as a judgment from God and a time when He's withdrawn His hand of love from us. I don't know about that, but I do know that many of life's experiences can sometimes lead us to think, if we're not careful, that God is rejecting us. Of course, for our brothers and sisters in the so called persecuted church, this is a very real and very present danger. Uh, for them, there is no possibility, it seems, humanly speaking, of lockdown being eased. For them, the sense of isolation away from their fellow believers, the opportunity to meet together in a church building of any sort, or even in a small prayer group, is just impossible to comprehend. It could be very easy for them to imagine that God has rejected them. Psalm 74 speaks into that kind of emotion as Asaph pours out his heart, asking, "O God, why have you rejected us forever? Why does your anger smolder against the sheep of your pasture?" And so he goes on for 11 verses, accusing God, really, of having withheld his hand and withdrawn his love. But Psalm 74 and verse 12 says this: "But God is my king from long ago. He brings salvation on the earth." And the rest of the psalm is a kind of crying out to remind Asaph himself of God's power and God's majesty. He talks about God's covenant with his people. He talks about God's creative supremacy and his mastery. The day is yours, and yours also the night. You establish the sun and moon, he says, and things like that. When it feels as though God has rejected us, we can wallow in despair and fear the fact that God may not ever be close to us. Or we can turn our attention back to Him, remind ourselves that God is our King from long ago, that His promise of salvation for all the earth is still there, and we can choose to draw close to Him. The psalm ends with these words: "Rise up, O God, and defend your cause. Remember how fools mock you all day long. Do not ignore the clamour of your adversaries, the uproar of your enemies, which rises continually." And that should be our prayer for those who attack us. That should be our prayer for those who attack our persecuted sisters and brothers across so many areas of the world. 260 million Christians are under fear of attack right now. Let's be praying for them. Let's be praying that God rises up His army, His force against those who attack His people. But let's not despair. Let's pray together. Father, even though sometimes it feels as though you've rejected us or withdrawn slightly away from us, and we find that really difficult, help us to remember that you're close. Help us to remember that you're present. You're an ever-present help in times of trouble. And help us to call upon your name in all circumstances and in every situation. Help us to trust you to bring your justice and the glory of your name across our earth. Amen. Amen. Thank you for joining with me. And again, I look forward to sharing more on another day. God bless you.